I never thought I'd be the guy locked out of his own house. I used to hear those stories, guys crashing in their trucks because their wives tossed them out, and I'd think, that's gotta be exaggerated. That doesn't happen in real life. But it does. And it happened to me. My name's Ray. I live, or used to live, in Katy, Texas. I'm a maintenance supervisor at a public school. Nothing fancy, but honest work. Been working there for 12 years. Got married young. Too young if I'm being honest, to a woman named Amanda. Back then, she was sweet, vibrant, funny. We met at a crawfish boil, hit it off, and everything moved fast. Maybe too fast. But I was 24, thought love fixed everything. Fast forward 10 years, and the woman I came home to wasn't the same woman I married. Somewhere along the way, Amanda stopped laughing at my jokes. She stopped looking at me like I was her man. Conversations became arguments. Arguments turned into silence. And eventually, the silence felt like a punishment. I'm not saying I was perfect. I worked long hours. I wasn't always emotionally available, but I never disrespected her. I never put her down. I never gave her a reason to hate me. But hate is the right word for how she treated me those last couple years. Everything I did seemed to irritate her. How I chewed, how I parked the truck, how I folded my shirts. She'd roll her eyes like she was doing me a favor just by staying. I stayed because I believed in commitment. I thought rough patches happened. I told myself marriage had seasons. I suggested counseling. She laughed at me. I tried writing her a letter once, just to lay it all out since talking didn't work. She crumpled it up without reading it and said, "Grow a pair, Ray." Yeah, that one stuck. It all came to a head on a Friday night in late April. I stayed late at work because one of the HVAC units at the school was acting up again, and with the Texas heat rolling in, we had to get it fixed before Monday. I sent Amanda a text around 4 p.m. Gonna be late, don't wait up. Love you. No reply. I got home just before 11 p.m. My feet hurt. My hands were black with dust and insulation. I was starving and sweaty, but all I wanted was a shower in my bed. I pulled up to the driveway and noticed something weird. The porch light was off. Amanda always left it on. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was asleep. I went up to the front door and tried my key. Nothing. It didn't turn. I paused. Tried again. She'd changed the locks. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe something broke. So I knocked. No answer. I rang the bell. Still nothing. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I knocked harder. Nothing. I walked around to the back, hoping maybe the sliding door was unlocked. It wasn't. I stood there like an idiot in the dark, mosquitoes biting, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the pure disbelief of it all. I sent her a message. "Amanda, what's going on? Door won't open. I'm outside." A minute later, I got a reply. "Figure it out. You're not sleeping here tonight." That was it. No context, no emotion. Just that. I stood there, staring at my phone like it had just slapped me. I tried calling again, ignored. Sent another message. "What are you talking about? Let me in." She responded. "I'm tired of you. You're always working, always tired, always boring. Go sleep in your truck. Or better yet, maybe one of your loser friends will take you in." I didn't have the energy to yell or argue. I just stood there numb. My stomach was growling. My shirt stuck to my back with sweat, and the woman I called my wife had turned me into a stranger at my own front door. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a soft voice from the driveway next door. "Ray." I turned and saw Clara, my neighbor, standing on her porch in pajama pants and a long cardigan. She was holding a cup of tea and had this look on her face like she already knew what was going on. Clara had moved in a year prior. Early 40s, gentle presence, always kind. She was divorced, worked remotely as a freelance editor, and kept to herself mostly, but we'd shared a few friendly chats while mowing the lawn or bringing in trash bins. Nothing more. "You okay?" she asked. I didn't even know what to say. I was embarrassed. She locked me out. I finally mumbled. Clara took a long sip from her mug and nodded, like it wasn't the first time she'd seen something like this. "Well, there's room for you at my house, if you need. I've got a spare room. You don't have to sleep in your truck." I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to say no. Pride, dignity. But I had nowhere to go, and she wasn't offering pity. She was offering humanity, something I hadn't received in my own home for years. "You sure?" I asked. "Positive," she said with a warm, tired smile. "Come on. You look like you've been chewed up and spit out. I chuckled. First time I laughed all week. I grabbed my backpack from the truck and followed her inside. Her place was cozy, books stacked neatly, the smell of lavender in the air. She pointed to the guest room down the hall and said, "You can shower, sleep, do what you need." No questions asked. I just stood there for a second. The quiet, the calm, the kindness. It felt foreign. "Thank you," I said. She nodded again and went back to her tea. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, freshly showered, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just empty. I realized I hadn't felt at peace in my own house in years. But in Clara's home, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a person again. And that was the beginning of everything changing. I woke up earlier than usual the next morning. Clara's guest room was small but clean. White walls, floral curtains, a quiet ceiling fan spinning above. I hadn't slept that well in years. Not even joking. I didn't toss and turn like I used to in the house with Amanda. There were no loud sighs from across the bed, no cold shoulders, no arguments echoing in my head. Just peace. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to walk on eggshells. I got up, fixed the bed, and went to the bathroom down the hall. There was a fresh towel folded on the counter and an extra toothbrush still in the package. I knew Clara had done that for me after I went to bed. A small gesture, but it hit hard. That kind of care was something I hadn't felt in a long time. When I walked out to the kitchen, she was already up, sitting at the counter in flannel pants and a UT Austin hoodie, scrolling on her iPad, coffee mug in hand. "Morning," she said with a soft smile. "Morning," I replied. "Thanks again for letting me crash here." "Don't mention it," she said. "Coffee's fresh. You want eggs or just toast?" I blinked. Toast is great. You don't have to cook." "I'm already making some," she said, already cracking eggs into a pan. "You need a real breakfast after the night you had." I don't know why, but I felt a lump in my throat. Something about that moment, simple, domestic, peaceful, made me feel like I'd been starving emotionally and didn't even know it. We sat and ate quietly for a bit. She didn't bombard me with questions or offer cliché advice. Just let the silence be easy. Then, after a second sip of coffee, she finally asked, "Want to talk about it?" I nodded slowly, staring into my mug. I don't even know where to begin. "Start where it feels honest," she said. So I did. I told her how things had been with Amanda. How it started small, little jabs, constant criticism, cold behavior. How every time I tried to talk about it, Amanda would shut me down or mock me. I talked about how I'd put in the effort, date nights, flowers, even therapy suggestions. But nothing mattered. I always felt like I was failing at something. "Sounds like she stopped caring," Claire said quietly. She did. And I kept holding on like it'd fix itself if I just worked harder. I rubbed my forehead. Last night, that was the end, I guess. But in truth, it's been over for a long time. Clara nodded and looked down at her mug. "I get it more than you know." I looked at her. She hadn't said much about her own past. So I asked, "You been through something like this?" She smiled, but it was the kind that hides an old bruise. "Yeah, my ex locked me out emotionally for 5 years before we divorced. Never said it out loud, but he made it clear I didn't matter anymore. I used to cry in the shower just so no one could hear. I didn't say anything, just let that truth settle. That moment changed something between us. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were two people who'd been emotionally discarded by the ones they loved. There was a comfort in that shared experience, even if it was bittersweet. After breakfast, she went to work. Her setup was a neat little corner desk in the living room with dual monitors and a big stack of books. I offered to get out of her way, maybe find a cheap motel for the weekend, but she waved it off. "You're not going to a motel," she said. "Stay as long as you need." I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "Thank you again." The day passed quietly. I took a walk, grabbed a few groceries for her as a thank you, and made some calls to a buddy of mine about temporary storage and maybe staying with him long-term if needed. I wasn't planning to go back to Amanda. Not after that. Something had finally clicked in my head, and the lock on the door was just the final push I needed to see it all clearly. That night, Clara invited me to sit on the couch with her and watch an old Clint Eastwood movie. We didn't talk much during it, but it felt comfortable. Her dog, a sleepy golden retriever named Mabel, curled up next to me like she'd known me for years. After the movie ended, we sat there with the lights low. She glanced at me and said, "You look less tired." "I feel lighter," I said. Isn't that weird? After everything that happened. No, she said. It's what happens when you finally stop carrying dead weight. We sat in silence again, and then she asked something that surprised me. Do you miss her? I didn't answer right away. I thought about it, really thought. I miss who she used to be, the woman I married. But the woman who locked me out? I don't know who that is. And I don't miss feeling like I wasn't good enough in my own home. Clara nodded. That's how I knew it was over for me. When I realized I missed peace more than I missed the person. That stuck with me. Before bed, she handed me a clean towel and smiled. You're not alone, Ray. Even if it feels like it. That night, I slept even better. Over the next few days, something quiet and honest started to build between us. We weren't flirting or forcing anything. It was just mutual respect. Two people who'd been through emotional war zones, finally finding shelter in each other's company. Amanda didn't text, didn't call, not a word. And honestly, that silence felt like confirmation. I could have been dead in a ditch, and she wouldn't have cared. But here was Clara, a woman with no obligation to me at all, making me breakfast, asking how I was, giving me space when I needed it, and support when I didn't even realize I did. One evening, while we were both sitting outside watching the sunset, Clara said something that stayed with me since. You deserve softness, Ray. You've been living in storm clouds so long you forgot what sunlight feels like. That night, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Not as a husband, not as a victim, but as a man finally free from the cold. I stayed at Clara's house for about 10 days. They were quiet days. Simple. Healing. I mowed her lawn as a thank you. Changed a flickering light bulb in her hallway. Fixed a stubborn drawer in her kitchen that had been sticking for months. None of it was big, but it made me feel useful again, like I had value. Clara didn't hover over me. She just let me exist in peace. And after years of cold silence, sarcastic remarks, and being treated like I was invisible, peace felt like the greatest gift anyone could have given me. But peace doesn't go unnoticed, especially by those who once caused chaos. On the 12th day, Amanda finally made her move. It was around 7:30 in the morning. I was standing in Clara's driveway, helping her load some recycling into the back of her SUV when Amanda walked up from across the lawn. She had her arms crossed, face tight with tension, and a kind of forced softness in her voice that didn't fool either of us. Hey, she said, ignoring Clara completely. I gave her a small nod. Morning. She looked me over like she hadn't seen me in years. I'd shaved that morning, put on a clean blue flannel, and felt lighter than I had in months. I didn't mean to look better. I just felt better. You're really staying over here? She asked, like she hadn't been the one who locked me out like a stray dog. I glanced at Clara, who calmly closed the trunk and walked back toward the house, giving us space. I appreciated that. I turned back to Amanda. Yeah, Clara was kind enough to offer a room when you locked me out. She scoffed. Ray, that wasn't permanent. You should have come back the next day and talked to me. I tried. You blocked my number. Told me I was boring. That you were tired of me. What was I supposed to do? Beg to be let back into a house where I wasn't wanted. She shifted her weight awkwardly and looked down. I was angry. We were fighting. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You didn't mean it, but you changed the locks. Silence. I didn't expect you to move in next door, she finally said. I crossed my arms, not to be defensive, but because I could feel her trying to spin this, to make me the one who was out of line. Clara offered me peace when you threw me into the street, I said. I didn't move in to spite you. I moved out of survival. That hit her. She looked down again, then back up with watery eyes, but not genuine tears. It was that performative sadness she used when she wanted control back. I miss you, she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. We've been together 10 years, Ray. You can't just give up. That's when something inside me clicked. She still didn't get it. She thought I was the type of man who'd endure her silence, her contempt, her cruelty forever. She thought she had time, that I'd always be waiting like a puppy at the back door. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't give up, I said slowly. You did. A long time ago. I was just too loyal to see it. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. And now that I'm not begging for your attention, I added, you suddenly remember how to talk to me. Ray, I made a mistake. I got overwhelmed. I took you for granted. Can we fix this? I looked her in the eyes. For the first time in years, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I married. Not the fantasy I held on to, but the reality of who she'd become. Someone who only valued me when I was gone. No, I said, calm as ever. We can't. Her face dropped, and for a second, I saw something real. Panic, regret, maybe even shame. She stepped forward. Please, I'll make it right. You can't make right what you never try to protect. That was it. No yelling. No drama. Just the truth. She turned and walked away, back to the house we used to share. She didn't look back. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Over the next few days, I started getting texts. I miss your cooking. I saw your truck isn't there anymore. Are you staying at Clara's permanently? Do you remember that little taco place we used to go to in Galveston? I'm sorry. Then came the guilt trips. You really moved on that fast. So all those years meant nothing to you. Clara? Seriously? That's what you do now. I didn't respond to a single one. And that, I think, was the cruelest thing I could have done to her. Silence. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had nothing left to say. The truth is, Clara and I didn't jump into anything romantic. We kept it light. Respectful. She gave me space. I helped around the house. We watched old movies. We talked about books and music and faith and what healing actually means. It was a friendship built on honesty. One night, after dinner, Clara turned to me and said, "Do you feel free now?" I nodded. Yeah, I do. That was all she needed to hear. She didn't say, "I told you so," or try to label what we had. She just smiled and topped off my glass of sweet tea. About 3 weeks after Amanda locked me out, I signed a short-term lease for a small apartment 2 neighborhoods over. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I bought a used couch, borrowed a bed frame from my buddy Mark, and finally unpacked some of my tools. It wasn't a palace, but it was a kingdom of peace. Amanda tried to visit one last time. She came to the apartment door crying, begging for a second chance. "I've changed," she said. "I realize everything now." I looked at her, this broken version of the woman who once treated me like background noise, and felt nothing. No hate, no love, just the quiet strength of a man who survived being erased. "I don't hate you, Amanda," I said, "but I don't trust you, and I don't need to suffer just because we share a past." She cried harder, leaning against the doorframe. "I'll do anything." I shook my head. "I already did everything. It's your turn to sit with the silence." Then I gently closed the door. The final chapter wasn't explosive. It was quiet, clean, undeniable. Weeks later, Clara and I had dinner again. She smiled and said, "You know, you're a different man than the one who showed up on my porch that night." "I know," I said, "and I'm not going back." She raised her glass and clinked it against mine. "To peace," she said. "To peace," I echoed.